we get our international players to give compelling answers in an interview. Welcome back to Translation Timeout. Today is the third and final video about interviewing international athletes, and today we'll talk specifically about how we prep our players for interviews. If you have questions at any time, please leave a comment below or email me at translationtimeout@gmail.com. So we've talked about the right environment, we've talked about the right questions. The only thing left is the right way to prepare our athletes. The first thing we want to do whenever we can is give players the questions ahead of time. Even if it's just a quick social media interview, practice in advance. We know it's more challenging to think on the spot in a different language, so the more time they have to understand the question and plan an answer, the better they'll perform on interview day. Even if you don't know the exact questions that are going to be asked in the interview, you could probably guess some of the themes people want to know about, so create some questions about those and practice them. And if you're not the one who's doing the interview, you can't guarantee that the interviewer will ask questions that are appropriate for your player's proficiency level. Although by all means, feel free to send them the previous video about adapting questions. But that being said, you're going to want to practice the types of questions that you think the interviewer will ask, including authentic and complex language, because your players are going to need to learn how to understand and answer those types of questions. So that means part of your interview prep should also include breaking those complex words down for your players and providing a simplified interpretation of what the question means. Then practice answers together and give them feedback so they have an idea of what the interviewer might be looking for when they ask a certain type of question. So I actually taught English to some hockey players who got drafted into the NHL recently, and I helped them prepare for their draft interviews. So let me walk you through some of the work that we did together to prep for this using some sample questions that I received from a friend who works in broadcasting. Okay, first let's look at this question. Who would you credit for helping you get this far? Does anything stick out to you as potentially challenging for an English learner? Well, two things that stand out to me are the word credit and the phrase get this far. Some players might learn the phrases credit card or movie credits before they learn the verb to credit, so that could be confusing. And get this far has literal and colloquial meanings, and while the context may seem clear to a native speaker, I have had players misunderstand this phrase. So first, I showed this question to my players, and then to simplify it, I explained what those phrases meant and modified the question to who supported you and helped you become a good player. And my athletes were able to come up with better answers to this version because they understood it better. And then here are some more questions. In addition to breaking them down and explaining key words, I also gave some advice for answers. For example, in terms of development, keep the answer positive. In regards to conditioning, I gave some examples and reframed the question to help structure their response. Usually we spend one class discussing and breaking down the meaning of questions, and then I send them our notes so they have time to think about them and come up with answers. And then in the next lesson, we'll go through the questions again. They'll give me the answers that they came up with, and I'll give them feedback. And we go through this process as much as possible to help build the player's proficiency and confidence. This is an example of a sheet I made for post-game interviews for players with lower English proficiency. We go through this interview every class session, so athletes get very comfortable answering questions about their gameplay. We start with sentence frames, pictures, and example answers so players can just focus on the language they need for the gameplay details. Over time, they're able to produce these sentences themselves and don't even need the sheet. It becomes an easy interview routine with unique answers every time because every game is different. So you end up practicing a variety of vocabulary, and the players get comfortable thinking about their gameplay in English. Then it's a little bit easier if they do get pulled into a last-minute interview after a game. These are just some of the things that you can do to help a player build interview skills, and a lot of things you can do don't even have to be sport-specific. There are some really fun ways to build interview skills, like public speaking games, role-playing. Storytelling is great for giving dynamic answers, and even having players practice complimenting each other is a really great way to teach them to be humble and be a team player. Now, if you're watching this and you're thinking, Stephanie, there's no way I have time to do that, this could be where an English teacher comes in. In an English class, there is dedicated time and space set aside for a wide variety of learning activities that will help your player build towards that ultimate goal of answering questions in an interview while building additional skills along the way. And it relieves pressure from anyone on your staff who doesn't know how to teach English but has found themselves teaching English anyway. And that's not a knock towards anyone who's found themselves in that position, because I know that a lot of you are a lifeline for your players, and that's great, and I commend you for that. But a certified English teacher would have the capacity and expertise to target your players' needs with a wider range of learning activities without putting more work on your plate. So, to recap, there are a couple of things you can do to help your English learning players get ready for an interview, starting with giving them extra time to practice whenever you can. Give them the questions or similar questions ahead of time, break down complicated ideas, and talk through answers together. It would be great if everyone could adapt their interview style to our athletes' needs, but we also want them to be ready for anything, so using authentic language and then simplifying with them will be a huge help. Today's handout begins with conducting a practice interview. If there's anything that still seems to confuse your players, take note and think about what additional changes you can make for better clarification. As always, reach out if you have any questions and stay tuned for my next video in which I'll talk about communication scaffolds or communicating when you don't know how to communicate. Thanks for watching and see you again soon.